Good morning. My name is Richard Miller, and welcome to Never Not Here. And this is part of our series called Open Mic. And open mic means really anyone who wants to can come and talk, probably about anything too. Although I suppose, I'm always trying to steer the conversation one way or the other. But I think that's what happens in life, We're all not perfect receivers. We're trying to get it the way we like it, or, verify our belief structure, or I don't know. So, because sometimes I wonder what I'm doing, I'm not really trying to teach anyone anything, but still I notice I have preferences. People say some things in it, and that strikes me as intelligent, or I don't know. You can notice in your own life, I'm sure, that there's a feel of what you want and what you don't. And I'm not always so sure that's such an important thing. So this morning we're talking with Jeremy Vaeni. So please help me welcome. Hello, Jeremy.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Yes.
Thanks
sir.
for having me on.
So Jeremy, I met you have like a radio show, but it's a podcasting show, or?
Yeah, it's a podcast called Paratopia, which you can find at paratopia.net. And we started off talking about things dealing with UFOs and alleged alien abductions and that sort of, stuff, paranormal stuff. And then we sort of evolved into broader human consciousness issues, because that's really where the material took us. It took us, maybe ironically, away from aliens and more toward humans. So the show is pretty much all over the map, but it's fun.
Right. So in a way, maybe, who knows, us humans are aliens too, because we really don't know ourselves that well. And,
well, yeah, that's actually always been my point on the show, which is, you want to talk about the other. You want to ask, what is this thing we call aliens? And we don't even know the basic fundamental, what are we? And I feel like you have to deal with yourself before you can start asking about an, hypothetical other.
Right. I was talking to people lately, well, just day to day here in the house, and not necessarily online or anything. And it comes up so often. Like, for instance, you say you have to really accept yourself and love yourself before you can love anyone else. And it's okay. Yeah, right. Okay, I heard that already. Right. And, but how does it plug in? How does it really happen? Just like you said, okay, we hardly know ourselves, so how can we really know what an alien is? And we say, right, yeah, okay, I'm doing that, or something. But how does it really get to be a reality? Does it? Do I really love myself, or am I really able to care for other people or connect to other people?
Well, part of the problem, I think, is that the supposedly enlightened folks who were originally say things like, you've got to love yourself before you can love another, or, you've got to start near to go far. All that stuff is instruction that they received after the fact of whatever their big epiphany is. And so to give that instruction to us doesn't help us. It just, I feel it makes us sort of repress what we are instead of dealing with what we are, to try to be that other thing. And that's always been the problem through the ages, is, looking up to these people that have something that we want. And even if their message is just love yourself, that really simple set of words doesn't have the same meaning for us as it does for them, because we don't know what they're talking about.
No, that's really beautiful. And, just to go another step farther, people are trying to point at something and they're trying to teach something, but many, many, many times, more than half, I bet you, that's not how they got there. They just, when you said their epiphany, it just happened, And then they're trying to piece it together and say, well, maybe this is how it happens. Or they might even just say, that is how it happened. The way I was doing these studies, I was doing these meditations, I had these gurus, I did, and maybe it's not. It just happened anyhow, in spite of all that other stuff. Who knows?
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, I know that for me, I had I mean, I had what I guess you would call a Kundalini awakening, and part of that process was a set of epiphanies about the human condition, and they're somewhat intellectual and so on and so forth. But I imagine that if I were a different person and I had this experience, that I would then feel special and try to bring my enlightenment to the world, and I would try to convince people or try to help people, in quotes. I mean, I could see how that would happen. You have these epiphanies, and then you think, okay, well, these are applicable to other people, but they're not applicable to other people. They're the case that you see when you're not that person that you just were. So how do you translate that to the people who are the people that you just were?
Yeah, in other words, you're saying like it was just, it sometimes seems intellectual, but maybe just talking about it seems intellectual. But at the time it was happening, maybe it wasn't all that intellectual. It was just kind of like being blown away, maybe.
Well, that's it. I mean, it just happens. It's like with this Kundalini awakening, again, for me, and I think it's different for different people, because whatever this energy is sort of does whatever you need based on the abuse that you've given to your own person and body. But for me, I mean, it physically moves me around and makes me do Tai Chi and do these sort of odd martial art looking things that I have absolutely no background in. So part of it is this physical, healthy exercise. Part of it is this mental exercise. Part of it is, quote unquote, psychic awakenings and that sort of stuff. But it's all based on what I don't know that's healthy for me, you see? And so it's not useful. It's not useful instruction for anyone else. It's just this cleaning up the damage that you've done, I think.
You talked about intellectual and thoughts, and what about emotional? I mean, did it clear your emotions, or somehow ease up on fears, or maybe just make emotions more transparent, or feeling? And did it give insight into what is a feeling, or what is a sensation, what a sensation does to you, or how it grips the body, or where it comes from?
Yeah, it definitely, all of the above. I unfortunately allowed myself to be dragged back down into my own baggage and psychology and all of that, sort of as a choice. But if I didn't make that choice, then yeah, I would probably be Mr. Blissed Out non-attachment guy, because that's what I was for a good long while. But I think that even those emotional things that you're talking about, you can actually get to those prior to any sort of experience, just through positive negation, just through tracing back your own, why do I act this way? Well, I act this way because of this. Well, why did, it always goes back to your parents. And then you say, well, why did my parents do that? Well, because, dad was taught this by his folks, mom was taught that. And in that sort of breaking down to the root, you always end up back to the same thing, which is, we don't know what we're doing. And I think that that's cleansing, because then you're not attached to those sort of, arrested development emotions, those sort of ghosts of your childhood haunting you.
I like that, the way you said that, arrested development emotions, that means like an old program, right? Or like an old strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you think that to our problem-solving brains, we want to say, what you need to do is go to a psychologist, or what you need to do is figure it out intellectually or think it through, and it's like, well, in this case, that's not what you need to do. In this case, you deconstruct it, and when you peel away the layers of the onion and you see nothing's there, then there's that rest feeling, that sort of, okay, I'm no longer attached to that because it's not there. It was never there to begin with.
Right. You talked about tracing back, and I suppose that's on a lot of different levels, because you can think about it, of course, and maybe you can remember things that you had suppressed and weren't remembering for a long time. Mm-hmm. And then maybe, of course, old feelings are always hanging around and moving in and out, and usually we're trying to just say, well, enough of that one, let me out of here. And just how do we do it? Like maybe we just get involved in some other activity, or just more or less do something to forget it. But in a way, this is like what I was thinking that we could talk about too, and we're right into it before I even introduced it.
Oh, great.
But I was thinking like, okay, you're doing a podcast, I'm doing this talk show thing that's got a video, but basically it's a radio show with a video enhancement on it. And we're linguistic beings as humans, and you and I are probably intellectual types. And so then how do we reach out on a podcast or on a video? We talk, and we use language, and language is full of a lot of components. You can just say a few letters, a small sound, or just the word sound means everything that vibrates and can strike my eardrum and activate my nerves. So sound to me is any kind of vibration that my ears accept, If it's a real high-pitched something, maybe it's a sound for a dog, but not for me. And that's a pretty big word out of 5 letters, like that it holds just about everything, even known and unknown. And does it really hold it, or is it, I don't know, maybe it's an abstraction, right? In other words, what makes a human is that we can put our attention on some other so-called place and time. So there and then instead of here and now. Whereas most of the animal world probably works in here and now. And so then the abstraction is the linguistic part of humans. And then how does that change us, Okay, we are using the language, and we're teaching and learning, but that's not the words are not the only component of teaching and learning, so we talk about subjects like awakening, but not only awakening, everything, even like alcohol abuse or something, or smoking, but yet we don't change for years and years and years, or many people have a very difficult time. Even they could tell you all the cancer statistics in the world, but yet they want to light up another cigarette, right? What's what makes something really be known and learned? Is what are the components?
Well, I think it's different for different things. Certainly, Joe Campbell, among other people, certainly pointed out that at least in this country, we're missing rites of passage. So I definitely think that there are certain communal, let's call them tactics. I don't know, communal, that's really a horrible word.
Is that ritual? Is like, he's talking about a ritual then, rites of passage?
Yeah. So we have these sort of substitute rites of passage in, for instance, gangs or, probably even pop culture. These sorts of ways of coming together and of doing things and, moving on into adulthood and things like that, that are just ludicrous, that have nothing to do with nature or us. So that's one way of learning that I think is missing. But I think also, just the force feeding of any sort of education without caring about what the student actually wants to learn, or that sort of fast food education, I think, is another problem.
Just like any kind of curriculum, in other words, is just trying to force a mold. But we do that right from the very beginning. All parents and grandparents are trying to mold their children and give them what they think is going to be a head start, right?
Yeah, but even that used to be, it used to be like they would give advice, or they would, you'd say that these are old school parents, right, who try to raise their kids on, well, when I was a kid, or in my religion, this is the way we do things.
Well, especially in a religion, because much of the world is very strict about religious education for youngsters.
Yeah, but for those of us who don't have that, which I think is a lot, at least of Americans, then your parents and grandparents, when they say you need to get an education, what they mean is you need to go away to some school and get a piece of paper that will get you a good job.
Well, they're probably just saying you need to do something that I never could do.
There's that, there's that too. But one is, one is completely meaningless, and one is, I don't know, probably wrong in a sense, but has more depth to it emotionally, because it shows some sort of caring on the part of parents and grandparents.
Yeah. Just before I leave, I forget. I want to say one thing about rites of passage. Probably there's so much disrespect for our elders and that there could never be a rites of passage around here because we want to kick their ass. We don't want to just take their wisdom.
Yeah.
Something like that, right? I don't know why. Why is that?
Well, again, I guess it depends on how you're looking at that. I mean,
but is that true?
You mean just general disrespect for older people?
Well, I don't know. I mean, of course, we go to school.
We want to kick older culture's asses too,
Well, that too, the Bible and all that stuff. We say, well, why are those guys know everything? And how come there's no wise people now, or even the Greeks and Socrates and the philosophers and I don't know, and the Renaissance thinkers, and they're the ones that we learn about and are revered. But what's happening now? I mean, there's a few poets and things, but I don't know what.
Yeah, where are they? Yeah.
It's mostly all politicians and stuff, and it's all scandals and all we hear about that. We don't really have any intellectuals.
Well, it's all in what you worship, isn't it? I mean, we're a money culture now. We've sort of said, let's take the arts out of everything and let's make everything commerce based. But I think in terms of where are these sort of deep thinkers now? Maybe the silver lining there is that once they're gone, they were there originally to sort of set the template, but now it's up to us. Now it sort of is like, well, you've got enough of the book learning. Now it's time to put up or shut up. Now it's time to actually become that or not. And that's up to us as individuals. And it always was all along anyway. So, I mean, in a sense, especially with computers and all, I mean, we've got all of this information at our fingertips. I'm not certain somebody could come along now and say anything differently than we've been saying for thousands of years. So we've heard it enough. Now, do we care?
Yeah. But, I said, we were talking about how humans are abstract. They can be there and then. So there and then is just a thought, A thought can go to there and then, but a body or an animal or a being cannot go to there and then. It only can be here and now. I think I feel pretty confident of saying that. I mean, I don't think I have any doubt about it. And so then our attention can rove around. But, I mean, where it roves is not really a real place or ever was a real place. Even if it was historical, maybe it's just our interpretation of that history. And so then it's really a wide-ranging rover. It can go into all kinds of fantasy and all kinds of personal interpretation or wishes, or it doesn't really, doesn't have any limits.
Mm-hmm.
And so then you were saying everything's been said, maybe. So those philosophies have been said. As long as our attention is on those philosophies and the truth and what we call the so-called truth of those philosophies, or those archetypes, or Joseph Campbell, those mythologies and so on, and we see that, well, that's the way it is, right? Well, then naturally our thoughts are attached to that and are just going to carry that along as baggage and maybe be some kind of a development on those old thoughts. But somehow, can there ever be a new thought? I mean, of course there can, just when you're kind of like in a peaceful state or like in a meditative state, maybe a thought will pop out that has no, I don't know if it's a real new thought, but I mean, if you're really...
Yeah, but can there, in terms of this spiritual stuff, can there be a new thought that is helpful? I mean, to me, it seems that what we can do now is sort of... refine what's been said, or experienced. I mean, if you get it, and you have some sort of giant experience, then knowing what you know, and then having experienced what you just experienced, is there a way to put it together using the language of the day so that it gets through? I mean, maybe that's just it. It's just a constant, through the years, over and over again, repetitive retelling in the language of the day of the very simple thing, the Judeo-Krishnamurti thing, truth is a pathless land. How do you take those words and then develop giant systems out of them? But it seems that if you narrow down anything from any, Buddha type, a Jesus type, or whatever, I mean, that's basically it. The kingdom is found within. What is that? It's like you need not go beyond that, and yet
Yeah. Well,
you
that
do.
doesn't have any path, and the truth is a pathless land. Well, I mean, all those, you're not really distilling anything out of that. You're just ignoring that and going back to the old,
To the path.
the path. You're going back to
Right.
the path and saying, well, yeah, that must mean that there is it's total ignorance,
Yeah.
of just,
Well, because that's what the brain wants to do something. The brain is a doer.
wants a
And
path,
so
and the path is a
so
bunch
we
of
think that we
thoughts.
can find, yeah, so we think that what we need to do is find this pathless land. It's like, well, no, you don't get it. You've got this nothingness, which is the ultimate consciousness, essentially. And to get there, you need to clear away the clutter of thingness, which is what meditation attempts to do, which is what deep prayer attempts to do. It's silencing the mind. But the mind doesn't want to be silenced because that's not what the mind is. Or
That's
at least the
not what the
brain doesn't,
mind
I
is.
should
That's
say.
perfect way to say it. That's not what the mind is. So then it's not that it doesn't want to be silenced. It's
It
that's
doesn't want
not
to die. It
that's
doesn't want to be
not what it
annihilated.
is. It's not
I mean,
that.
yeah, I think like this is sort of the big. I think the big sort of scandal through the years has been that none of these guru types ever actually say what's at stake, because they want to say, like, okay, transform into a butterfly like I am, and you'll have the freedom of flight. What they're not telling you is that transformation, you can't bring you with you when you go. That's the annihilation of what you are now. And I think that we understand that, and so we go, I don't want that. I want to add on to myself. I want self-empowerment and self-improvement, not self-annihilation. And that's what the nature of these paths are. And I think enough of these, again, guru types, I don't know what to call them, but I think that they understand that most people are going to go that way. And so for those people, well, it's better to love thy neighbor than club your neighbor. So let's set up these rules of morality and ethics that, at the end of the day, to me, at the end of the day, you're either roaming around a caterpillar or you're transforming into a butterfly, and you can do both. And there's no right or wrong in some sense, but in another sense, it's like, well, if that's the nature of the species, then you either transform or the species goes, because the species does have a duty. So what do we want here? And I feel like, I don't know, and I could be completely wrong about this, but I do feel like we're at the end of something. I do feel like this is time for caterpillar self to transform or not. That you're either going to have physical suicide or you're going to have this sort of mental annihilation that brings you into some new state of being. Could be completely wrong,
yeah.
but that's my feeling about it anyway. What say you, Richard Miller? Because I know I interviewed you for Paratopia, and I think if I'm not misunderstanding you, sort of your take is let's all just be good people, and let's that sort of thing, right? And I guess I think there's something more dire at stake in, like, okay, we can just all be, but we're missing something here. And I think, like, when you have that giant transformative energy experience, where something else is now inhabiting you, and that something else is more natural than you are, then it's like, well, what do you do with that? Do you just ignore that? I mean, do you just say, well, everybody, we should just treat that like an anomaly? Some people can have it, some people can't. Or is that the force of evolution? Is there some evolutionary thing that we need to, like, get over this hump mentally and become something else? I don't know.
That's a really good question. What do you do with that? So what do you do with that? I mean, you had that experience. What have you done with it, or what's going on?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, again, so now the dilemma is, if you have that experience and you think you know something about it, and one of the things that you definitely know is that telling people about it does not fundamentally transform them, as we've just been discussing. Talking about it isn't the thing. So what do? You can't teach. You can't be a spiritual teacher. So I don't know. I mean, ultimately, I don't know. I mean, what do I do about it? I write books and I, talk about it, and maybe it's selfishness. Maybe it's just needing to get it out of your system or needing to connect. But ultimately, I feel like if you go with the life is but a dream model of reality, all things are a sort of necessary illusion. Maybe there just needs to be people who, from time to time, come into the dream and go, "You're dreaming. Wake up." You can wake up from this. You're dreaming. And maybe that's all it is for thousands of years, is people just reminding us what we fundamentally are blocking out. What we've been blocking out. It's sort of the truth of us. Will it do any good? Does it matter? I don't know. I think it's necessary to keep us from going completely batty.
So, like you can just look and watch it, watch inside and see how it functions and what happens,
It's like a reverse anchor. Like we always think like rationality is the anchor. And in some ways it is. It's like you've got to have a rational component to something. It's got to make sense, right? But this is like the reverse anchor. This is, no, this rational bunch of constructs that you guys have made is part of the picture, but it ain't the whole thing. And you know what you are, so come back to it. It's sort of that come back home message, which is, I think, more of an anchor than don't go off the deep end.
So this rationality is like that somehow ties you to your structure and ties you to your environment and ties you to your relationships and somehow not tie. I'm not trying to say it. Well, it does bind you actually, but I mean, I'm just saying it fits you in. You like you're a piece that fits in the puzzle or something like that, and you have these relationships which are either people or things or activities or environments or somehow, and that structure is the rational part you're talking about, and maybe it's not all that rational, but we make it up as it is rational, just so we operate in a certain way. And then when we see that way wasn't all that rational, this way that we're doing things is causing global warming or resource depletion or other kind of things, and then we can alter that. But each time it alters, that just proves it that it wasn't true before, and even before that, it wasn't true for sure. And so, what makes us think that it's true now? Tomorrow we'll be changing it again, right? So then these are just kind of like that's the illusion part. Is that this? You could call it a game or something, or we're constantly updating our sense of our abstract sense of what life is about, and we're updating that all the time. And whether it would ever be accurate and be life, it'll never be life. Just as when they say the menu will never be the dinner, well, the description will never be the life or the interpretation.
Right. Yeah. And in a sort of a more almost, if you want to put it into sort of concrete terms in a way, let's go back to the paranormal. I don't know how comfortable you are with these topics on this show, but one man we've had on who's a complete genius, his name's George Hansen, and he's got this sort of trickster theory. But basically what he's found in his research is that people have all sorts of paranormal and odd experiences when they're in a state of anti-structure. And that anti-structure can be some sort of abusive situation, or it can just be they're moving, anything that breaks up the structure. It generally... So in a sense, it's like if, we're looking at the paranormal the wrong way. It's not, hey, what happened to you? It's, hey, who's the observer? What's going on in the observer's life that they're having this happen? So let's take that and pair it up with what Lakota speaker Tiokasin Ghost Horse told us about alien abductions, which is aliens don't abduct Indians.
So how is he? How will he be an expert on it then?
Well, no. I mean, the point is they have a different relationship with nature and with these things that we wrongly assume are alien. And I think you put those two things together, and what is anti-structure? What is the structure that we are being anti-structural about? It's this sort of, rational box that we put ourselves into that we go, okay, this is normalcy. This is my normal day. And we have this tunnel vision. And when you have anything that pops through that, it's like the larger environment that's there, the sort of zoo of ecology that is around you, that you've built your little cage to block out, comes pouring in.
So in other words, let me try to rephrase that. Like you're saying that first we said rationality had some kind of a value, and then every once in a while you should apply a little bit. And then now we're talking, if I understand right, that the rationality is kind of a filter, and that's all we see is what's rational. And somehow, the more we put our attention on that rationality, that's the more it comes through. And then you said if somebody's moving or somehow in a anti-structure or somehow something breaks in their life, and then they have a paranormal. And what happens is that rationality broke and something, we say, sneaks through. But what happens is the filter kind of went down for a second, and then they saw the wider vision, which is not really paranormal, it's normal. But
Right.
but for that one moment, they weren't looking through their old rationality, which was the filter that filters everything out. And so then maybe that. So
Yeah,
then
yeah. And so for someone like the Lakota, according to Tiokasin, now I'm assuming that, he's not misleading me on this, and I have no reason to not believe him, but, he says the Lakota come from the heart. They don't come from the brain. They understand what we're talking about when we talk about the brain and all that, but they come from the heart. And so what does that tell you? If true, then they're already there. None of these paranormal things are paranormal. They're just normal. They're accepting of all things.
So they see all those things, and they have,
Yeah.
they may even talk about the reverence of the wolf or the reverence of the moose, or have a god, different god, maybe deify different things, but they're in their life already, and they don't necessarily have the same Western rationality that eliminates all these other views and said, no, that's baloney. This guy's a dreamer.
Right.
This guy should be in the insane asylum. Lock him up.
So that would be sort of the outward expression of what we're talking about, and then the inward expression would be, again, meditation. I think meditation is anti-structural. You're breaking up the clutter of your mind, the thoughts of the thoughts that are you. And so what happens when the thoughts that are you dissolve? What takes place? This, again, if you want to say larger ecology of the internal, I don't know, something, however you want to call that, something fundamentally different takes place that, to the person who never had that sort of ego issue, would be completely natural. But to you and me, or maybe just to me, it's completely frightening and terrifying and all that.
What did you mean by ego issue?
Well, I think not being properly integrated. I think all of this is about balance, essentially, holism. And I think the ego, or the persona, the self, is this monstrous entity that thinks it's the whole game, thinks it's the center of everything. But when you have the big sort of I am enlightenment experience, or whatever you want to call that, that takes a back seat. Or even for people who do, certain hallucinogens, where their personal consciousness recedes into the background, and it becomes this completely out of control, scary experience. I think these are sorts of similar things. I think the recontextualized ego, or properly contextualized ego or self, isn't necessarily the thing that's in control, but becomes the mask of the energy that is the universe, whatever you want to call it. I don't know how non-woo-woo I can make this, but it becomes the facade for the bigger self, if you want to call it that, or the ultimate self, to sort of shine through outwardly into the world. So when brain self dies, big self takes over. I guess is what I'm getting at.
Or when it steps aside for a second. Well, we just talked about meditation as being a way to kind of see a bigger picture. And then we talked about, you mentioned drug experiences. And the thing about it is, when meditation is done and when drug experiences wear off, somehow our old story, most of the time, I think for 99% of the people that, I don't know about 99, because I don't know how many meditators, what, or anything, but I think so many, their normal structure of their story of their life resurrects that the moment they walk away from the meditation room, or when the drug experience wears off. It doesn't really, it changes a few. I've heard of a few people that kind of woke up from drugs or had big things in meditation, but the thousands and thousands that try it, really, it doesn't really make any difference, does it?
Well, here I think you get into set and setting, and I think it depends on what you're in it for and how much you do and where you are and all that stuff. Certainly people who do these things for recreation or for some sort of personal gain, no, I don't think it's gonna do anything for them. But if you're in it really to go, okay, what is this? If you really do have this sort of scientific, inquisitive mind, which is, I guess, ironic since we're talking about disbanding rationalism in some way, and here we are. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you need to have a scientific mind to go, okay, what is this? I think those folks probably have a higher percentage rate of experiencing something that they would feel is more real than real.
But does it stay? It doesn't really stay, does it?
No.
It's not really integrated in their life, is it?
It's
not integrated in their life.
No. And in fact, then I think it can become, even though supposedly these things aren't addictive, I think the addiction can be to then wanting that experience again, constantly going back for whatever that.
So let's say you have a big drug experience and then you really learn something. I don't know how, I can't really give a really good example. Maybe you make a great painting and, it's abstract art or something like that. And then when that comes off, you can't make that unless you're a couple of times you can make it, maybe going back to the drug, but after that, maybe you can't even do it then, And it doesn't really make, whatever you learned from that state that was so disconnected from this state, isn't really a learning in this. In other words, you probably didn't even get any motor, make any new nervous paths in your motor systems. Let's say you can play music or sing pretty good when you're in a drug state, and then when you're not, you can't do it anymore. So it really hasn't made any new motor pathways in your nervous system or really changed anything, because there was such a discontinuity there that whatever seemed to be learned wasn't really transferred to this body in this state. Right. So then I'm saying, like, those discontinuities, once in a while it's said that they change the unit, forever, but I think it's pretty rare.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And then the question is, are these things, are they showing you, I mean, what are they doing, right? So they're doing something to you, at least partly biologically, changing something in you. Is that the same thing that you get with the Kundalini experience or with deep meditation or, I don't know. If it's the same thing, if it is the same thing, a drug trip and a Kundalini trip and certain meditation trips, then what you're saying is, I think, is it just a state of mind or is it a stage on which we can live? And if it is a stage, then, well, does it even need to change your neurological pathways or anything like that? I mean, right now I've got this Kundalini energy, right? So I did this thing where I got it. I had the moment of I get it, right? And in that moment of I get it, Kundalini, whatever, this energy that moves you around and makes you do things, blah, blah. But this thing is now in me, like you've got Mac and PC in the same computer. I've got these two separate processors. I've got me talking to you right now, and then if I shut up for 5 seconds, this energy will take over and start, moving around and stuff. Now, but is something changed in my brain or in my body, or what is that that's actually changed, and where is it going? I don't think it's changed anything in my brain. I think it affects. So
are you saying in a way it doesn't give you any peace? Because you said if you be quiet for 5 minutes, you're going to start.
No, it is
feeling.
Peaceful.
You're going to feel things.
It's a weird thing. Yeah, it's a weird thing. It's like so if you meditate and you sit quietly and you concentrate, then you'll do that. If I do it, then I'll end up walking around and doing stuff. But it is peaceful, and it feels completely peaceful and completely natural. But part of that isn't just the exercising. Part of that is also visions and sort of clear audio events and things like that. I mean, it's all sorts of things that maybe are akin to what happens on some of these hallucinogens. I think these are all sort of variations on a theme. And so if you're asking, is it possible to live on that stage without the drugs? I think it is, without even changing neural pathways. I think maybe what the drugs do is recess your sense of self enough for whatever this, larger thing is we're tuning into to manifest.
So it just kind of makes you know that this isn't it. This is not all there is. There's something more.
Yeah, well, this is why I wanted to talk to you specifically about this stuff, because, again, from my perspective, going through this, like, I've had the big God I am experience, right? So I've had the big identifying as this visual of nothingness creating the universe, and that identity process is identifying. So, say you have a visual of the Big Bang, right? It would be that your perspective isn't just you watching the Big Bang; it's all the things that just banged big. All of the perspectives of rocks floating through space and suns and trees and wind and all of this stuff, you would adopt all of those perspectives at the same time, which is completely preposterous. And I can totally see why these guru types say it's, you can't explain it. It's something you have to experience. Well, you can explain it. It's just that the explanation really leaves you wanting. So if you have that experience, then for me, the question is, am I supposed to live on that as a stage? Is that what we become? Something that has this sort of non-local, all perspectives at the same time sense of self? And then one of those perspectives is of course you back here in the world, because it's all perspectives. Is that what we become? Is that what we're supposed to do? Is that what this Kundalini energy is doing? Is it sort of preparing me, if I decide to not block it out and not be fearful, to make that leap into that experience as not just an experience, but the thing that I become? I mean, A, do you think that that's possible? And then B, if it is there such a sense of we should do that? Is there a we should? Do you think that that's a wrong thing to say? That there is definitely, because this exists, we need to be that? Because I don't think that really jives with your perspective, but I could be wrong. So, in other words, do I sound like a rambling madman to you?
You have a lot of energy and you have a lot of intellect, so that's clear. That's clear. And okay, let's look at it this way. You had an experience, and people all through the ages have had experiences, right? And then those experiences necessarily, they didn't have the same beliefs that we have, right? And so then they would have had a different vision. They wouldn't necessarily seen the Big Bang and rocks and planets and stuff like that. Maybe they would have seen specks of light that they thought were stars, or however they wouldn't necessarily have seen Saturn with rings and all that kind of stuff, because they didn't really have any concept of those things. And in fact, an experience and thoughts of the Big Bang and seeing matter and energy and so on, it's probably very much in mind, because, I mean, there's no Big Bang. It's just a thought. It's an idea. It's just somebody said, well, look, there's lights, and the dimmer ones have a certain spectrum shift, and so they must be going fast, and so everything is splitting up, and so if everything is departing, it looks like, it's just totally interpretation. Then they're saying they must have been closer together before, so then let's go even farther back, and then it was all touching, so then it was a point, and then it exploded, and then there was a Big Bang, and I mean, what is that?
Yeah, well, I would say that from the experience, that it wasn't exactly that. The experience was there was nothingness, and that nothingness becomes self-aware, and that
right
becomes.
Okay.
I mean, these are not on a timeline. It's the
illusion
of the timeline. So in that moment of self-awareness, there's this sort of clarity, this sort of clear circle expanding over blackness, which has an elasticity to it that I could feel in my brain, and I thought I was dying. And then it snapped, and then there was a light, and from the light, everything. Now, of course, all of this is metaphorical in some sense, because I think nothingness and thingness are inseparable. So there is no this, then this, then this.
Well, there's not even any nothing, really. I mean, you could say the ground is awareness, because if we were shut off, if we had a switch and you shut it off, then we wouldn't have awareness, right? And then there would be nothing. So then that ground is like, okay, let's draw the universe on a piece of cellophane, and that cellophane is awareness. And then, that's the ground of it, And then if somehow we were all closed off, dead, or something, how could anything be in the field of, I don't know. And then we could say, oh, well, it'd be there without us, right? I mean, those are just thoughts, I mean, I don't know if it's real obvious that nothing would appear or nothing would be there, or, so much of what we talk about is really just a thought. It's just a concept. It's just a interpretation. It's just a projection. It's just an abstraction. And
yeah, but I'm trying to get it to whether, I guess what I'm trying to get to the nitty gritty here of whether there needs to be a metamorphosis in humanity or not. Is there?
Well, that's just an idea too. That's a total idea.
Well, but is it? Because here's the thing that all of these experiences through the ages have in common, you're right, isn't the visual, but it is that sense of, if you want to put it in our terms, non-locality or oneness or whatever, the identity as something seemingly outside of yourself, the identity as that. So if we're not just self-identified, but have the capability to identify with all things, should we? Is that telling us that that's what we're going to need to do?
Well,
are we going to look to ourselves as we look to, as monkeys look to us right now, or not?
Why is our life now not all things? I mean, because everything that's not our.
I wonder if apes have moments of self-awareness where they're like, in the same way that we have moments of trans self-awareness, do they have moments of self-awareness? Who knows? I don't know. But what do you do you think, so you don't think that there is something that we need to, or are going to, maybe not need to, but are going to become, that we're always going to be this, and so we should make peace with this?
No, but this is not fixed. We're always becoming. We're becoming every second, really. And the idea that we is a fixed concept, and it's going to be outdated. Now, maybe it'll be outdated in 1 second, maybe it'll be outdated in what we call a year. But, like I say, I'm a father, which I'm not. So that'll be outdated in 20, 25 years when my baby grows up and leaves, right? Or I could say, no, I'm always a father. Or he's dead, then he dies in the army or something, so then am I still a father? But anyhow, every concept gets outdated. An idea is more or less, how can it grow with life? It just is fixed, right? Concept. So then all concepts are destined to be outdated sooner or later. And maybe they're no good for even a second, except for keeping that rationality that you're talking about, which ties us to a structure that we play in. The structure of our society and our family and our jobs and our livelihood and how we somehow make it go here. And that's, let that be okay, that we have all that stuff, because, and then to say, okay, we should be some other way, or we have a big experience and then it's gone, okay. And maybe it's there somewhere, because you said it, and if I shut up for 5 seconds, I have movements inside of me that weren't there when I was young. And so then something it's a constant reminder that that my old way of life is not everything, or not all there is. And then to try to make something out of that and say, well, okay, books were written, or they show up in libraries that say that these have certain meanings, and that you can extend it, and it would go, it'll be, somebody will report that similar things happened, and then it went to this, and then it went to that, and then they opened up even like a flower or something, whatever they're saying, they're going to give a description of it and talk about a process and talk, but in the meantime, everything that is existential is just this life. And non-existential stuff is like the interpretation or the ideas. They can range far and wide, from the Big Bang to the destruction of the universe. And but those are not existential. So should we, or could we, somehow get in the driver's seat of everything that's existential and drive it over to our concept of how it's going and where it should be and what it could be? Our whole life almost is based on making things better, getting in the driver's seat and saying, okay, what I say goes in my life, and there's only a few times it doesn't really happen. You know, we're thinking, oh yeah, no, I drive really good this life. Or do we? You know, ultimately we drive it into the grave. And we didn't want to plan that. So we're not really the ultimate driver. So you said, we were talking about like not knowing, or the pathless land. And it's very exciting, the pathless land, because everything is like right there, and right here, actually. It's not right there at all in the pathless land. Everything is right here. It is when it is, you know. And it isn't when we're just thinking about it. So then I'd say that this is our life. And it's okay, and it could be fun to think about how it would be different. But really, basically, at least some of our attention should go on this life. And that let's make it, yeah, make it like a science project. You know, you've been given this science project, and it's called Jeremy, right? And you want to see what makes it go and where it is, and just concentrate on, you know, give it some attention, you know, even 50%, but, you know, okay, give it 10%, you know, because as a concept, this life is pretty poor. You know, here we are, and you're in one room, I'm in another, and we got a couple of electronic connections, but it's not really exciting. We're not the president of a corporation, or we're not making political decisions, or we're not saving the world, or we're not really even out gardening or getting a suntan. We're not really doing anything that a concept would say would be better, you know. And so then the real life, when it's looked through that rational filter, is rather impoverished. And then the rational filter embellishes there and then, like tomorrow or yesterday, and makes it, and it also has a lot of emotional value too, because, you know, emotions come in thoughts and memories, because we remember how it felt when we had a good time, and we remember how it felt when we were told that we're not good enough or something like that, or when we were scolded or abused, worse, you know, or, you know, when we saw murder in front of us and just saw people just totally freaked out. I mean, it could run the gamut. I mean, you know, whether it's somebody in a war zone or just our own soldiers that have to go and see terrible things, it affects them in an awful way. And so then thoughts or memories have such a big charge of emotional charge that you can live that surrogate life, or that, you know, like second life, a surreal life, or a virtual life. You know, we're all living a virtual life, basically. And there's the virtual life and there's the real life. And the virtual life is pretty exciting because it's got a lot of special effects. And it's on demand too, because we can go to a movie or just have a memory of a terrible thing or a risky thing or an exciting thing, and we can be thrilled. And then, or we, you know, I mean, it's funny because like the abstract part of us is really proud of being abstract too, because people can say, that's just a movie, you know. I don't really get carried away by all that violence. Or if you'd show that same movie in a primitive or aboriginal society, you might have a street riot. They'd run out, you'd show some terrible injustices, and they'd run out and start ransacking the town, or, you know, because they wouldn't be quite so abstract as we are. So that abstract part of life is what we give so much attention to, that it impoverishes the real part of our life. And, you know, that abstract part of the life actually is in our spiritual assumptions too. And I don't know. I can't give it that much weight, you know. I just can't. Uh-huh. I mean, I sure play with it, you know, and think about it and stuff. But I'm trying to live balanced. In other words, to see the difference, that there's an abstract part and there's an existential part. And at least don't totally. I mean, I would say before I might have ignored totally the existential part, like the here and now, you know, in my life. And if I was just to say, okay, again, I'll repeat it, let my life be a science project, and I'm the major scientist. And I would just want to see how it works, everything works. And in order to do it, I kind of have to be here and just watch it, and whether I actually describe it and put it into the language, that's only useful if I have to tell it to someone else. But for me to know it, for you to know your Kundalini experience, you don't have to really tell it to yourself or make words out of it. You just know it in the feel of it and the experience of it. And you don't have to say it's going to stay or it should be my goal to get there, as if you could be the driver that would drive yourself into more Kundalini experiences. I mean, you can try and see if you can, but I mean, I don't think you can on any kind of a permanent basis. And you didn't even drive yourself there in the first place. It just happened, right?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no. I mean, it's.
How about with your intention? Did you have an intention to have a Kundalini experience, or?
No, I'd never even heard of Kundalini or any of that stuff. I mean, all I knew was just, again, from reading Jiddu Krishnamurti books, and he never says what happens. He just says, do it and find out, sort of stop for the sake of stopping with no intention of anything other than, as you say, as an explorer or a scientist, just to see what happens. And he says this over and over and over again throughout his life. And then after reading a number of the same thing over and over again, I got why he was saying it and why nobody else got it. Like, it just became clear. Like, oh, I get it. I see what's going on here. And now this is my final illusion. Now my reading these books is still me not doing it, not getting it. It's still my way of being me. So I just sat quietly, for the first time, like completely quietly. And in that moment of complete quiet came this, if you want to say other energy, seemingly other energy, this thing that isn't my persona. I guess where I stand on it is getting back to why nobody's come along and with anything quote unquote new in so long, is that maybe the sets of questions that we've been dealing with are localized to what we are now, and if there is some sort of breakthrough that this Kundalini leads to, and maybe that's wrong too, maybe ultimately you need to, that's another illusion, you need to even rest and be quiet through that. But whatever it is, if there is some other veil to be pierced, maybe it brings us into a whole new set of questions, about ourselves, about nature, and all of that.
Right, just when you have an explanation of something, when you call it Kundalini even, all right, that throws you back into a whole tradition, and then you say, no, well, this is that, but you don't know. But if you were the real scientist, you would just be quiet and just observe without really trying to lay any kind of a description on it, at least an old description, and then later it might come to you that there is a description that could kind of, and then that could be a new thought.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying Kundalini just to name it.
Yeah, we kind of get what it means,
We need to
like
talk
it
about it,
rushes, there's some kind of a rush or something, I mean, yeah.
But here, I know we're sort of pressed for time, but I wanted to ask you, since this is your interview show. Sorry,
no, go for it.
Used to being the interviewer. But what do you make of someone like Michio Kaku or any of the Silicon Valley guys who want to inject our consciousness into machines and have some sort of, biotechnological singularity happen? I mean, what is that to you? Is that a wish? Is that wish fulfillment of the self, or is that something that can happen? What does that mean for you? Anything?
Well, I don't really know about it, but I mean, if somebody wants to somehow, I don't know how they would grab our intelligence and download it from a human, and that I could tell how they might upload it to a machine, but I'm not so sure how they would download it, whether they can do a brain scan and somehow see. I'm not so sure about that. I know that a lot of people are trying to manipulate the planet Earth and do things, inject stuff in the ionosphere and do things to manipulate global warming and do a lot of things that are really totally untested with our planet, and even just simple things like GMOs and things that happen with Monsanto and all this kind of stuff that where you let something new into the atmosphere and it just spreads. Okay, that's the proof, like Monsanto. Okay, like they make some GMOs and then it gets planted in a lot of places and their pollen gets into everyone else's pollen, and they're claiming that they own all the canola oil in the world because somehow there's a 1% of their GMO in there. And so then they're unleashing a lot of stuff. Now, I don't think if somebody tries to put some, I don't think it's dangerous for people to play around with just seeing if they can make a computer be human. I don't know what. Is that what they're trying to do? I'm not so sure about that one.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw Michio Kaku. He's a physicist. I saw him speaking at a convention, and he was saying it's his wish to someday in his lifetime see human consciousness downloaded or uploaded, however that works, into computers so that he may have immortality.
Well, there was the other guy, Timothy Leary. He actually had a machine that he was going to cut his head off when he died. It was right in his living room.
It's called a circular saw.
Yeah, and he was going to freeze it, you know. They were going to, just the moment he died, they were going to put him into cryogenics, right? And they had the tanks and all that stuff there, and he was going to do that, you know, and then he changed his mind at the last minute, you know. But, well, you know what is fascinating for me? I'll tell you what's fascinating to me, that our culture as a whole is so much into separation, or I mean, now I'm saying what it is. I don't even know what it is. Let's say I don't know. It's a pathless land, but science is somehow such a beauty that billions and billions and billions of dollars can go towards someone with the goofiest idea. You know, and even the huge accelerators and stuff like that, which are many billions of dollars, and I don't know, they smash a bunch of atoms around or whatever they're doing. And, you know, you can hardly get a nickel for the things that we're talking about, and really to find out what is really a human all about, and how are our thoughts regenerating, and why is there, you know, why are one thought tied to another, tied to another, tied to another, and we can't really break out of this context of who we think we are, the old mythology, right? The abstraction, and we can't even, if we could just have like 1,000th or 1/10,000th of the financing, and do some kind of research. Set people to do research on some things that we talk about. That's amazing to me, that science can, you know, that somehow this society and these governments trust this scientific. They come up with the craziest thing, and then they'll say, okay, they've found the physicists have found 13 dimensions. All this abstraction, you know, just going more and more to abstract, and how this is going to be somehow important. And if it's not important, then they'll say, well, it'll make a better weapon, you know, so we can protect ourselves. All that stuff's abstract, you know, that we have enemies, and, you know, that humans have to dominate. And it's just an old mythology. And it's amazing that people consume this, and they go for it, you know, and they allow their congressmen to just say, yeah, we're going to be a scientific nation. And that blows my mind. That someone like that could even talk and have an audience, and that people wouldn't just totally ignore him, not even laugh at him, not even give him the energy to laugh, you know. And and just, you know, it's amazing. So, I don't know.
Well, that's where we're going. Get used to it.
How is it, you know, you asked me about just being and somehow just relaxing. And somehow I think that so much of our society and so many of the, what should I say, the symptoms that sprout here and there, no matter where, you know, energy, environment, relationships, humanity, all our symptoms somehow seem to come out of stress, anxiety, worry, and fear. And how do, you know, and when we're trying to solve all those problems, all those solutions seem to come out of stress, anxiety, worry, and fear. And so then somehow they're not very successful. the solutions are no more successful than the symptoms or so-called problems. And I'm not so sure if that isn't a self-regenerating loop, that somehow the only way to break out of those appearances is somehow break out of the anxiety, stress, and fear, and so on. And people are willing to say fear is natural and needed and all that kind of stuff. I've had some experiences. Once I fell off a mountain, off a pretty steep cliff, and had a pretty terrible fall. And several times I had some traffic accidents and some nearly drove off of a cliff once. And I didn't have any fear whatsoever. I mean, I just got out and did what I had to do to save the day, and the fear came later. I mean, even when you skid on the highway or something like that, or do a 360 in a snowstorm or something, and it's happening, you're just trying to turn the wheel this way and that way and this way and see what will happen, you know. But later you're shaken, right? And they call it, you know, that you've gone into, what do you call it? Stress, you know, shock. You go into shock, right? But that comes later, right? And then it just kind of hits you. What? Hey, this was like I almost died. And so then I'm not so sure all those things are needed, all that fear, or I'm not so sure it's natural. And I'm just wondering, if you just set yourself to notice that, oh, here I go again. I'm trying to solve something by being anxious about it. And this time it's even worse, you know. And then just say, oh, I'm not going to believe in that anymore. And then just go back to, you know, not trying to ignore it, or not trying to split from it, or not trying to suppress it. But just watch those feelings, just kind of let them go back to rest. And then just say, okay, my life's a science project. That's a good way to say it. Or just say something, you know, make up a story that just says, I'm going to be a contented scientist working on this problem, but I'm going to work on it from, I'm really curious, for one thing, why this happens or how this happens, you know. And I'm curious, and I'm really, you know, I'm really interested. So then, you know, I know that people get hurt, or I'm being hurt. Let's say my cancer's growing bigger or something like that. But I mean, I know if I'm stressed that it's actually going to grow bigger. And so then I'm just going to, is there a way, or could there be, and that's kind of like what I was talking about probably when we talked before. Is there a way that you could just look to your own relaxation about the situation, because even the situation is so much of an interpretation, you know. I mean, that's one way to notice that the interpretation really will give you stress or no stress. Because if you say something is dreadful, it'll be stressful, or unjust. It'll be you'll be up in arms and real tight, you know. But if you say something is well, even just to say that, okay, my parents mistreated me, but their parents mistreated them, so it's not personal, you know. They didn't do it on purpose. They did the very best they can, and already that just relaxes you and say, well, you know, just a story can change this stress level, you know. Because we say that the world is in a terrible mess, you know, and then that's a stressful story. And so then that creates all our solutions are coming out of stress. And we can say, well, maybe it looks like a terrible mess, but that's just somebody has told me that. Some people have told me that, you know, and let's just look at it from a bigger picture.
Yeah, I mean, I call that sort of the Animal Planet or Discovery Channel perspective of trying to be, I mean, nobody's really objective, but trying to place that camera between your eye and the world, and be not attached even to your own self, to where in the moment of fear or terror, you can even say, where is this coming from in the body? You know, what is this a reaction to? Or the world, you know, why is it that people are doing this? What is it? I think in understanding what your own body is doing, or in understanding what motivates people to do what they do, I think that is a de-stressor, because I think just that understanding is the distressor. I think the fear comes from confusion, you know. So, but ultimately, then what in terms of the world? Because, you know, then do you have to do something with that? I mean, do you then have to stop the bully from punching you in the face, even if you understand that the bully's punching you in the face because his parents punched him in the face, and that's how he
Well,
learned
yeah, no, but I
all of
mean,
that?
you still try to get away. You know, you still survive. I mean, you still. It just happens that, you know, it's an automatic to try to turn your face or move out or break loose of this bully,
But I think it's
you
an
know,
interesting question of
write your
whether or not
congressman or whatever it takes. You know.
does there need to be fear. Here's a twisty answer for you for does there need to be fear at all? Which is yes, in the sense that there is fear, and therefore it needs to be exercised in the context of who we are now. But if you look at the hero's journey, you know, where you go into the cave and you fight your expectations and then, you know, and your deepest fears and all of that, did you need to take that journey at all? When you come out the other side and you're a better person for it or whatever, a more whole person, it's only at that moment that you can even ask that question. Did I need to do that? None of that was real. But in the context of the cave and the fighting, which is the person that you just were, you did need to do that.
Yeah, you need to do it. You need to do it because you need to find out that it's not real. Up to the point of that part of your life being an indicator that it wasn't all that real. You know, you don't even have to say it's not real or it is real. I mean, but I mean,
well, it's real to you at the time, just
yeah.
the same way that, you know, any sort of naive question or giant imaginative thing is real to a child. You know, how do you know that that's not real or not a good question or stupid? I mean, how do you know these? How do you have these judgment calls unless you've gone through being a kid and grown up? You know, so I think fear maybe is part of that equation. Part of our childhood experience here in this world is fear, and so yeah, we need to experience it because it's there, like, or else it wouldn't be there. It's like almost a simple answer in a way, but I don't know.
No,
I don't think there's anything more
I
to
think
it
that's a
than that,
very
really.
very good point. That's a very good point. You know, it's there, so then we have to experience it or, you know, look into it. You know, but so many times we don't want to experience it. We run from it somehow, and we blank out in some way. You know, like shift our attention.
I think it's an interesting point you raise, which is that the fear comes after the event. It's not, but does it always? I wonder, or is that just
well, when you're really in a
when you're in a deep terror situation, right? You're in the now moment, that sort of instinctive coming together and your heightened senses and all of that because you're in self-preservation mode, right? So,
right.
and then afterwards you go, oh, and you sort of relax back into yourself and the adrenaline's going and all that. But is that always the case, or are there, like, if you're being mugged, for instance, I mean, there's that fight or flight instinct that kicks in. If there's a situation where you have no choice but to confront, like falling off a cliff, is that different than a fight or flight type situation where somebody's confronting you and trying to take advantage?
Well, you know, I'm not so sure there is any fear in this moment. You know, because fear might all be about the future. It certainly wouldn't be about the past, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, the past is done, and if you were just being rational about the past, you'd say, well, I'm glad I finished that one, you know, it's over. But you think, oh, it might happen again. And so then the fear is all into that, you know. But, I mean, right now it's not happening. So then right now there's no fear. So most of the time, in that scenario where it's not happening now, and it did happen in the past, and I think it could happen in the future, then that part of fear is always in the future. Now, for those people that have experienced some really horrendous or really life-threatening events, and then not all of us have, actually, and I only have experienced a few of them, you know. And I've even heard of people that have been in a war zone and under heavy fire, and their partner was riddled with shrapnel, and his head was flying off, or, you know, some really horrendous stuff. And I think they were having like a spiritual experience, actually. They were not really having a fear experience. Of course, afterwards, they've got post-traumatic stress, and they can't operate in society for 40 years or something, you know. I mean, it's...
Well, or you hear about these guys who want to get back to war to because they've never felt so alive,
Right,
that sort of
a
thing.
few maybe.
Yeah. I mean, I know them.
Well, I mean, they could do something else. They could bungee jump, or they could, there's a lot of other things you could do for that.
Well, but you were saying it's a spiritual experience. And I guess I'm agreeing with you. I think, that can be, it's that thing that brings you outside of yourself. But so I guess getting back to whether or not fight or flight or just terror happens after the fact. So what's the difference there? The difference between being mugged and jumping off a cliff or being shot at is the interval of a few seconds. You have thought. If you have time to think about a situation as it's unfolding, as it's sort of coming up, then I think fear can strike you in that moment. But if you're just right in the thick of it,
it depends. If it's not quite that radical, then you got time to think about it. But if it's really, really, really up against the wall, there's really no time to even have a thought. Because
I was out in the middle of an ocean in Hawaii, and I had a panic attack, and in that moment of you realize there's no shore near you. If you have this panic attack, you may well, you're going to drown. So it's like, okay, what do you want to do here? Do you want to like, you've got this time to think. It's like, okay, you can either calm down right now or drown. But I think if a shark were coming at me, there wouldn't be that panic attack. You know what I mean? It would just be like, okay, swim.
Yeah, right.
There wouldn't be any question of what to do. Just do it,
Right.
So I think that's probably is the difference maker. That tiny little interval of time where you have a decision to make brings fear.
Right. But anyhow, I think you get what I'm saying. I'm not trying to deny that anything exists or just trying to escape it. I'm just saying that what makes the world kind of seem not to work or seem to spiral down. And I'm not so sure. Let's just say it's a science project. Again, I seem to be liking that phrase, and we're just going to say, well, okay, I've tried all my life to be serious, is what I was looking for, the term. I'm really going to get serious now, which is, I think, a seriousness is a stress reaction. I need to make this better. I'm not whole now. I'm deficient, and I'm the only one that's going to fix me because nobody else cares about me. And there is no greater universe or rhythm that I'm in. I'm just an isolated, lone thing that's gonna drown right here. And I don't know. I mean, so what's the greater rhythm? The greater rhythm is I know how to swim. I don't. I mean, for animals, they don't go into that really. They don't really go into those abstractions, and when they need to swim or fly or do something, there's a big strong wind and it's blowing them offshore. They're going to fly harder to get to some shore, or maybe they'll just glide and see if they find another island. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think this gets into another maze of ideas, but I think when you put it that way, it's like, well, what is this fear really about then? Isn't the fear, besides sort of the instinctive not wanting to die, isn't it about that we've set ourselves up as this immortal center?
Just our cherished thoughts about ourselves. We want to keep that structure going. It took us a long time to build it up.
Well, and of the world around you. You build up this sense of protection, like, this is who I am, this is how the world is, and that's it. And then
this is how I can be.
Someone punches you in the face.
Yeah, this is how I can be safe, and then and this is how I can be at risk.
Right, and this again, I think, gets back to Western civilization, in a way, creating pavement, creating houses, creating shelter in ways that blocks out the natural world, creating raid to kill ants, any of these things that are like, I can self-fortify, I can protect, I can be okay from that big nasty world out there, as opposed to being a part of the big nasty world, which is you. I think this sort of plays into that same sort of, it's a variation on that theme to me.
I suppose, what strikes me is like when we said it in the very, very, very beginning, we said, even religions say, you have to love yourself or be comfortable with yourself before you can be comfortable with your surroundings or with others or with society. And so maybe that is an important place to look and just see where that comfort with yourself is. And then somehow if that spills over, then it goes to like what I was saying, like how it's amazing to me how society and the population as a whole supports harebrained scientific ideas and finances the heck out of things that really are promised to give us something, but they never rarely deliver. They don't really give peace on earth or goodwill to men. And how would it be that we would make some other choices, and start to find out nowadays the buzzword is sustainability, and try to leave everything we touch in a better shape than when we got there, and not try to use the whole planet Earth as a throwaway. And how will that happen? It's got to be with you and me, right?
Yep. Yeah, there's no putting it off for somebody out there at some future point to do. Yeah, it's got to be us.
So that sounds like a really great project for me. I want to really embrace it and make it a part of my life, and then see and model it, and see if it'll work. If it's just all baloney, or if it really could be satisfying and could be, part of my life and the people around me, and how that can expand and really make a difference, include everybody. And so that's kind of like what happens when I think about these things.
Mm-hmm. Well, maybe that's a good place to leave it.
I think you're right. We really got into
come full
a lot
circle.
We've come full circle. We really could talk about a lot of different things and try to pull them together and see what, how they can really support each other. All these things we talk about are really supportive. And because sometimes, we talked a second about confusion, and then we were saying somewhere that stress comes from confusion, but actually it doesn't come from confusion. It comes from the idea that we shouldn't be confused. That's the stress. But if we say, we talk about a pathless land, truth is a pathless land, well then, it's just as confusing. If we're trying to make sense of it, it's confusing, right? A pathless land is a confusing place if you're trying to make sense of it. But if you're just accepting it, enjoying it, and celebrating it, it's probably always new.
Mm-hmm.
And really, satisfying, and it's certainly never boring. So, Jeremy Vaeni, thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. And we'll if you want to do this again, let's toss around some ideas again.
Right. I really enjoy talking with you, speaking with you, and you're really there to entertain any idea, whether it's centered or off the wall. You're ready and able. So I thank you.
Thank you.